6 things that I wish I knew about women when I was still in my 20s. The concepts I'm gonna discuss with you guys in this video, unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way, the painful way, through years of trial and error, frustration, and rejection.
Hey, excuse me. Hi. Okay. All right, take care.
And so the concepts in this video are going to be starting out with the beginning of an interaction. And then as we go deeper into this video, we'll be diving into conversation and then dating, intimacy, and all the way up to relationships and beyond. And so let's get into this very first point, because when I first started going out and working on my social confidence, I was so scared, I was so in my head that I couldn't even go up to a girl initially. And there was a lot of content that I would watch online about the idea of choosing signals and that you shouldn't actually go up and do cold approach. And so for me, there was always this like weird idea in my head about the idea around cold approach and rejection and approach anxiety. And so as I got further and further into my journey, eventually it got to a point where I just started going up and approaching regardless if the girl was looking at me or not. Initially, I would be going out to these nightclubs and literally just in my head stifled walking around and hoping that a girl would be like choosing me, right? And there is some validity to the idea that if a girl is attracted to you, she may display signals of interest. But understand, guys, that is by no means every girl that's into you. All right, that's a tiny percentage of women that are actually attracted to you that are going to blatantly display that interest on the front end. And so what I learned after years of going out and doing cold approach consistently was that there are a lot of women that are walking down the street or at the nightclub that are not looking at you, that are not playing with their hair, that are not waving at you or winking at you or putting themselves near you. They're just doing their own thing. They're going about their day. They got headphones on. They're walking down the street. They're in a nightclub. They're in a grocery store. And they're not looking at you. And you can still go up to these women and start an interaction, create attraction, get a phone number, and that could lead to a date. And in fact, majority of the women that I go out and approach and meet and attract, they are not showing me interest. Most women are not walking down the street just staring at you, especially me. I'm 5'8", guys. Like, I'm not a big dude. I'm 5'8", like 160. All right, so when I'm walking down the street, I'm not getting eye contact left and right, and I'm not getting eye contact in the nightclub. I need to go out and proactively start interactions in an engaging way. And yes, there are a decent amount of women that won't respond positively, but there's a lot of women that weren't showing interest. They weren't giving me choosing signals, and I was still able to make something happen in those conversations. So point number 1 is the idea that not every girl is gonna give you choosing signals, and you can still create attraction with these women. As I started going out and approaching more and more and more, eventually I got to a place where I could carry a conversation, inject some level of teasing, and I was actually getting phone numbers. I remember the first couple times I got phone numbers from the nightclub or even from daytime. I went home and I thought I was the fucking man, dude. Part of me was like, holy shit, I actually got the phone number. Like, that's cool to see this progression. The other part of me though was like, damn, I'm actually going on a date. I can't believe she gave me the number. I'm gonna text this girl. She said she's down for Saturday. I'm plotting out a whole date in my brain. And then lo and behold, like the next day would go by, I would shoot a text, she didn't respond, and I'd be thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll just text her again tomorrow. Or maybe she was busy at that point, let me just call her. And then she just wouldn't respond to the next message either. And then multiple days went by, and this happened a variety of different times. In particular, in the nightclub, it happened a lot. I was getting a lot of phone numbers, and none of them were going anywhere. And honestly, that's a very frustrating place to be in. If you're coming from a place where you've never gotten any success with women and you start going out and interacting, and eventually you face your fears and you build up a little bit of that skill set to the point where you start getting phone numbers, that's a massive win. But then I was faced with this second sticking point of getting phone numbers but not getting dates, not getting texts back. And it's honestly more frustrating because a lot of dudes at that point think that, well, there's something I'm doing wrong with the text game. I must be texting her the wrong way. Kyle, I'm good at running interactions. I just can't text properly. And honestly, guys, I've had those thoughts too. It really does make you question the text game. But the reality is, guys, is that there's a lot of women out there that will actually give you a phone number and they have zero intention of ever texting you back. They have zero intention of actually going on a date with you even. And that was a weird thing for me to grasp when I see a lot of dudes struggling with this too. They're like, but why would she give me the phone number? You need to understand that when you're in an interaction with a girl, she doesn't know you. You're a random dude, and there are a lot of weird, creepy, aggressive, even stalker men that are out there in the world. And this girl, if she's even somewhat attractive, most likely she's encountered something like that in her life. I promise you, if she's an attractive girl, she's had some weirdos crushing on her in high school or in college, or some crazy ex-boyfriend, just mad, random, weird, stalkerish dudes that are out in the world these days. And so when she's interacting with you, she doesn't know you. She doesn't know that you're just a genuine dude who's trying to get better with his social confidence, who actually manned up and saw an attractive girl, and he's so happy that he's finally talking to a woman. She doesn't know that. So when you go to ask for the phone number, she's not that attracted to you. She's enjoying a pleasant conversation, but she is not aroused and excited and swept off of her feet and fantasizing about you after the interaction. She's going to leave the interaction just thinking, he was friendly, that was nice, I'm not horny, I'm not aroused, I'm not mesmerized, I'm not starstruck, I don't want to go on a date and clear out my weekend to see this dude, right? She's not thinking that. So understand, in that moment, the last thing she wants to do is potentially piss you off or even get into a weird altercation. Girls don't like confrontation, especially with random weirdos. So what the girl will do at a lot of these times, she will politely give you a phone number, and that's her doing that as a means of avoiding an awkward situation where she says, no, thank you. Because some girls just don't want to lie about the fact that they don't have a boyfriend. And so other girls don't want to just say no, and it's like this weird thing. And so there's a lot of women out there that are like thinking in the moment, he's pleasant, he's cool, I'll give him the phone number. But then like a week later, or days later, she's not like actually desiring to clear out her schedule and go on a date with you. So yes, girls will give out the phone number. There's also a percentage of girls that will redirect you to a Snapchat or an Instagram instead. And then there's another percentage of women that will just blatantly lie and say, honestly, I have a boyfriend. You're very sweet, but I have a boyfriend. Thank you. And that is a nice, polite way of rejecting you without you taking it personally. It pretty much just brings in this other thing. She's saying, I'm sorry, I would. You're very sweet, but I do have this other man in my life. And that's another reason that the girls will lie and say they have a boyfriend. So point number 2 is the idea that the girl will give out a phone number or even give out an Instagram or even show some level of interest in the interaction with zero desire of actually going on a date or seeing you. Now, eventually I got to a point where I was actually running pretty good interactions. I'm talking about getting solid numbers. Like I would run a 5, 10, 15-minute interaction, daytime or nighttime, primarily in the nightclub, because when I started practicing this more frequently, I was in New Jersey and there wasn't that much daytime opportunity. So I would go out a lot during nighttime. And what I noticed from my interactions was I was getting to a point where I could create high levels of attraction. These girls were like kind of on me. It was getting a little bit sexual. There was tension. Sometimes I was kissing these girls. I was getting phone numbers. I would even be able to do this on dates. And there was a lot of opportunities where I would end up either leaving with the girl, end up back at my house, her house, or another location where something more intimate could happen. And I was trying to go all the way, man. I had just broken up with my first girlfriend like a year or two before. I hadn't gotten any action up until that point. There was a couple girls I was very nervous with in the beginning, but once I got over those nerves, I was just trying to go for it, dude. I was trying to go for it. I was like, yo, it's on. Let's just do this. And I start moving a lot faster. To me, it was kind of confusing because I met the girl out. You know, we spent some time together. She's kissing me. She's even talking about coming home with me, or we're on a date and she's talking about coming home with me. She comes back to my house. We're on the couch. We're hooking up. We're making out. I start touching her. And then at some point she just goes, by the way, we're not having sex tonight. Or I'm starting to touch her and she'll move my hand away. She goes, no, not tonight. That can be a very frustrating moment if you're a dude and you don't understand these concepts, because you're like, what the hell? Like, we're on a date, or we just spent the evening together. It's on. I'm in it. You're all about it. You're moaning while I'm kissing you. Like, what's the problem here? And so this was a very confusing concept that I didn't understand in my mid-20s. And it cost me to lose, honestly, a handful of women. I lost several women by over-escalating and being too about the sex and too caught up in the sexual desire just based off of straight attraction. I would think that these girls are leading me on. They were a tease. They were leaving me with blue balls, right? Like that was the thought that I was having back then. The reality was, though, is that some of these women, they actually need to feel a deeper connection. Like for dudes, when we see a girl, we're just turned on. If the attraction's there, the arousal's there, we're about it. There's a lot of women out there that it's not the same. Dudes need a high level of attraction. We need less amounts of comfort connection. But a woman, though, I would even argue there's some women out there that it's even more important that the comfort and connection is in place to a higher degree than the actual attraction. So that was hard for me to grasp because I thought it was all the way ramped up and I would go all the way about it like 100%. And then the girls were putting the brakes on me. One girl in particular, I tried to escalate on it. She was like, no, not tonight. But then she was still kind of like teasing me. And then we start kissing, and then I would go in again. And she was like, no. And then I would start teasing her, and then I'd go again. And it would build up further, and she would even start moaning. And then I was thinking like, okay, maybe I'm still going to get it. And then at some point it got really close, and then she rolled over. And it was one of the most frustrating things. I just didn't understand this. I was probably 26 years old at the time. But the moral of the story is, guys, is that dudes get more turned on, more aroused, more attracted, primarily off of the physical. Obviously, the connection and the rapport does matter as well. But as a dude that was in my 20s at that time, and I hadn't had those experiences, I was about it back then, bro. And what I'm telling you is there's a lot of women that need the comfort and connection at least equally, if not even more, than the attraction in place. And so that brings me into the next point, number 4, which is a slight variation around the idea of intimacy and sexual escalation with women. And before I dive into that really quickly, guys, I just want to say, if you're enjoying this content, if you want to level up your social life, your dating life, if you've been watching the content, but you really haven't changed anything in your life, or you want to accelerate your process, man, click the button below, check out my brand new coaching program, 30-minute one-on-one call directly with me, daily live Q&As, all the content, all the demonstrations, all the infield. Surround yourself with a popping community. Try it out risk-free for 1 month. Incredible offer at an extremely affordable price. The link is in the description. Check that out right now before the price goes up. Let's get into point number 4. Because as I got further and further into my dating journey, I noticed that I started to get more lays at a faster pace than I was previously. Like the old me, when I first started getting into this, at one point I was getting them like every so often. I would need to go on a second date, third date. And then at some point, I started to get a better understanding of the elements of what you need to inject into an interaction to create attraction and arousal more quickly. Like dudes that don't really study this stuff, they don't really understand how to, I guess, manufacture or manipulate the ideas of attraction in interactions, because you can be more deliberate and inject those concepts into your interactions to kind of like spike up the attraction and the arousal. I didn't understand that when I was first coming in, but at some point in my journey, these things started to click and I was starting to escalate quicker. I was getting more pulls. I was closing more frequently on dates. I was having more one-night stands too, honestly, at a much more frequent rate at one point. And that's when I started to realize that all the places I was going wrong in my previous dates, because the old me, the dude that lost his first girlfriend, I was a very soft, nice guy, very passive dude who would just do anything for the girl. I literally pushed my first girlfriend out of our relationship into the arms of another man, and I couldn't get her back because I was trying so hard to do every single thing I could to please her. And it just wasn't working. It literally repelled her further away from me. I learned a very painful way at 24 years old that what the girl says she wants versus what she's actually responding to are two completely different things. And that's kind of correlated into this next point. And that's the idea that the girl at some point in her life, she will end up having sex with the alpha, with the playboy, with the bad boy. She will end up having a short-term mating strategy with that man. But that same woman, if provided the right opportunity with a provider, she will end up making that dude wait longer and longer and longer. She may or may not even put out for that dude at some point, depending on how he runs the dating and courtship. Okay, so for me, it just didn't make sense because there are a lot of dudes out there who see a woman that maybe they dated and they had to date them for a long time and not get any. And then later on, that girl ends up sleeping with some dude on like second date or whatever. And the guy's very quick to just judge that girl and call her a whore and say, blah, 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 blah. She's lying, cheating, slut, whatever it is. The reality is, though, is that there's a difference between the lover and the provider. The lover or the playboy or the bad boy or the alpha, whatever you want to call him. I don't like these labels, but whatever you want to call him, that dude can be the exception for a lot of women and what she would normally make an average man wait for in terms of getting sex with that man. And as I'm saying this, you might be thinking, well, like if the dude gets the short-term mating and then the beta gets like long-term or none, like what's the actual play? I would actually argue that I think the perfect balance is somewhere in between. Like you want to be that charming, confident, alpha dude, but you should also learn how to possess some level of provider, protection, security, leader, long-term trust and comfort and connection to a woman, because I think the combination of these is what's going to create that attraction and the arousal that could really spark something emotionally in the early stages of courtship and dating. But at the same time, you have all the comfort, connection, and the long-term mating strategy elements as well that could also keep the girl hooked long-term. And so that's why number 4 is understanding the dynamics between the lover versus the provider, or the alpha versus the beta, or whatever you want to call it, the red pill versus the blue pill. I don't give a fuck about the labels, honestly, but call it what you want. Just understand that there are different dynamics at play, depending on how the girl perceives you or is feeling about you. And so that brings me into point number 5 about things I wish I knew about women. And so as I started getting better and better with running interactions, going on dates, bringing more girls home, just getting a lot of different experiences over the ages of 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Like that 5-year span of really going out and hitting it hard consistently for years on end while obsessively studying, and then spending Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like really going out and pushing the shit. What I started to learn over time was that there was a handful of women that I actually started to see slightly beyond just being casual or like a one-night thing. There was a handful of girls in that 27, 28, 29-year-old time frame where I would be dating one of these girls and they started telling me certain things about how they felt about me. And there was even a period where I was deliberately trying to push having long-term casual relationships with a lot of these women. And what I noticed was that as I was seeing these girls, I was dating them, and on the first, second, third date, they would start telling me certain things. And I noticed that as the dating and the courtship went on, their perception or the things that they were initially telling me at one point or another, they started to change with the progression. The same girls that I was dating on the front end that were acting a certain way, they were telling me certain things about them. I noticed that they were acting, behaving, and stating different things at different phases in the courtship. It was as if they kind of like flipped on me almost overnight. Like things would be going good for a certain time until like one thing happened, and then I noticed that that same girl that was all kind of like lovey-dovey into me would really quickly kind of like either go cold or damn near even end the relationship. And even as I'm saying this, it reminds me to flashbacks of when I was trying to get my first girlfriend back. It was the same thing. Like we were on and off during this like breakup period, and she would be telling me one thing, and then very quickly, like a couple days later, she would tell me something that was like damn near contradictory. She would be saying like how much she really loved me, how she actually was considering giving me another chance, and how like these things were going on. And then like a couple days later, she would literally be like flip-flopping, talking about how, I don't know, this other guy was so quick to change, blah, 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 blah. And it was really confusing to me in those moments. But the problem was that I was focused so much on what she was saying in that moment, and I really wasn't paying attention to her actions. And this is a big problem that dudes do, is they fixate so much on what the girl's saying in that one moment, and they think that what she stated there is how she's just feeling indefinitely, not realizing that a girl's feelings, they have extremely like volatile type emotions. And so when you hear a girl tell you something, understand, however that girl is feeling is only how she is feeling in that moment about you. It doesn't necessarily mean that she feels that way. If she says she loves you, it means in that moment she feels like she loves you. And this thing, for me, I thought this was like very stupid when I first heard this concept, because I was like, what do you mean? You just told me this like a couple days ago. But understand, a girl is speaking from her emotional side. So when she tells you how she's feeling, it only means that's how she's feeling in that specific moment. That one for me was very hard to understand, but that's point number 5, is that don't listen to the girl and what she's saying. Pay more attention to her actions. And if a girl genuinely tells you she's feeling a certain way, it typically means that's how she's feeling about you in that moment. And that was a painful one I had to learn the hard way when my first relationship ended. And then so as I got older and older into my late 20s, going in my 30s, I'm not gonna lie, I did have this fear in the back of my mind as I was getting older, because I was still going out and I was meeting a lot of girls I was attracted to that were like 22, 23, 24. And I started getting in my head about the idea that I'm 29, 30, 31. And I remember around those times, I was insecure about my age. I was insecure that, oh, I'm like too old for this. Oh, the girl's gonna think I'm like weird and old. Or what am I doing out at this spot as a 31-year-old or a 32-year-old or a 33-year-old even? Like I was thinking, damn, how much longer could I actually do this for without this being like kind of weird, right? And I would always fear that. As I was approaching 30, that was like a big thought going on in my head. I hear a lot of my clients bring this up initially to me. They think they're too old. And guys, I could tell you honestly, I even have a 61-year-old in my program. You're never too old to work on your self-development, to work on your social competence, to try to get your dating life handled. There is no such thing as being too old to do that. I don't care how old you are, okay? But just to bring it back to the story, man, as I hit 30, 31, 32, I actually got more confident. I became more experienced. My skill sets increased. I had better understanding of female psychology. And I realized that as long as I could frame things as me being the older, confident, more experienced, more resourceful man, the frame is always in my favor. I didn't understand this when I was in my 20s. I thought as an older dude, I'm gonna be old, weird, creepy, and washed up and like grandpa status. I could tell you as a dude that's 34 years old, if you keep taking care of yourself, if you keep improving and you keep leveling up your resources, your knowledge, your experience, your confidence, your skill sets, your conversation skills, your lifestyle, it just gets easier. It doesn't get harder. It doesn't get weirder. It's not more difficult. It actually gets easier. As a dude, if you take care of yourself and you keep building skill sets up, your prime is not going to peak until you're at 35, 40, 45, 50. I see dudes that are in 45, 55, even 60 years old at this point, especially with TRT and all these other additional resources we have that you could use as anti-aging. The future is looking very promising. As a dude, if you're on top of your shit, you stay focused on your self-development journey, there is nothing to be worried about. And as a dude who's in my 20s, I really was panicking and freaking out about this stuff for a long time. I lost a lot of women just because the girl would ask me, how old are you? I said, honestly, I'm like kind of old. Well, like, how old are you? I'm like, I know this is kind of weird because I'm at like a college bar, but like, believe it or not, I'm like 29. You're 29? Yeah, I know. It's what are you doing here? Like, if you fall into that frame and you act weird and you act like you're old and it's washed up and all this stuff, they will treat you as such. They don't really care your age. What they really care is how you feel about your age. And if you're confident, you're mature, you're experienced, you're resourceful, you know you're popping because you've been putting in the time. And more importantly, you know that the girl's only like a 25-year-old or a 28-year-old or a 22-year-old, and you're not going to take it so seriously because you're older and you're actually more wise and more experienced. Not on some like toxic masculinity shit, man. I'm just talking like you're confident in yourself because you're an experienced dude and you're working on your skill set and you know the potential you have and you can interact with about those topics confidently, bro. Everything is going to get better and better and better. It only gets better with time, man. And if you want to fast track that result as a dude, click the button below. Check out my brand new coaching program. You work directly with me, the entire program. I'm extremely hands-on inside of this community, guys. 30-minute one-on-one coaching call directly with me to get started. Daily live coaching call every day with me. No time limit on that call. It's an interactive coaching call. You're not getting off that call without speaking to me. So you get accountability, direct coaching on a daily basis. You got all the content nice and structured out, going over every element of self-development, social confidence, dating, business, branding, sales, everything. It's all in there. The community's popping as well. You could try it out risk-free for 1 month for a ridiculously cheap price point. Click the button below, at least watch the video. The moment you join, I'll send you a DM so we can get started. That's all for this video, fellas. Peace out.